Steve Harvey announced the wrong winner of the Family Feud Fast Money round on a Thursday evening in November of 2018. And the moment he realized it, not gradually, not with someone whispering in his earpiece, but in the middle of the studio floor, mid-celebration, with confetti already dropping from the ceiling, is one of the most watched pieces of television in the history of the show. Not because of the mistake, because of what Steve Harvey did next, and because of what he said to the family he had wronged, alone on that stage with the confetti still on the floor. That was never meant to be broadcast at all. It was a Thursday afternoon in the Family Feud studio in Atlanta, and the Torres family from Albuquerque, New Mexico had just played the best Fast Money round any family had played in the previous 3 episodes. Maria Torres, 48 years old and a kindergarten teacher for 19 years, had stepped into the Fast Money booth and answered 5 consecutive questions in 41 seconds. Her answers weren't just correct. 3 of them hit the board's top answer. The audience had erupted. Her husband Carlos and their 3 children were jumping at their podium. The opposing family, the Hendersons from Nashville, had played a solid round, but hadn't matched it. The score was close enough that the production team in the booth had needed to double-check the tally twice. And in the chaos, and the energy, and the confetti dropping, and Steve Harvey shouting, and the music playing, a number had been miscommunicated from the booth to the floor. Steve Harvey announced the Hendersons as the winners of the $5,000 bonus prize. The Henderson family celebrated. They hugged each other. Steve hugged them. The confetti kept falling. The audience clapped. The Torres family stood at their podium with expressions that looked like people doing math they couldn't quite make add up. Carlos Torres turned to his daughter Elena, who was 21, and said something quietly. Elena looked at the scoreboard. She looked at her father. She looked at the scoreboard again. And nobody in that studio knew that in exactly 45 seconds, everything was going to stop. The Torres family had driven from Albuquerque to Atlanta in a rented minivan because the flight would have cost more than they'd budgeted. Carlos drove. Maria sat in the passenger seat with a notebook of practice survey questions she had been compiling for 4 months. They had done practice rounds every night after dinner for 16 weeks. Their youngest, a 12-year-old named Rosa, had been the one to notice the Family Feud casting call on social media and had sent the application from her tablet at 11:30 at night, not telling her parents until the callback came. They were not a family that had a lot of extra money. Carlos worked 2 jobs: daytime facilities maintenance at a university, nighttime security at a shopping complex. Maria's teacher salary was the backbone. They had 3 kids to get through college. They had applied to Family Feud because Rosa had convinced them it was possible, and because they needed to believe her. But nobody in that studio knew what the next 45 seconds were going to cost, and then give back. Carlos Torres raised his hand. He raised it the way someone raises their hand at a government office, not wanting to cause a scene but needing to correct something that cannot go uncorrected. He said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I don't think that score is right." The room went quiet in a way it hadn't all episode. Steve Harvey turned to look at him. Carlos said, "I have a daughter who answered those questions. I've been watching the board all night. I believe her total was higher." He said it without accusation. He said it with the calm of a man who checks his math twice before he speaks. Steve Harvey's smile disappeared. He held up one hand to the room. He turned toward his producers. He said, "Stop everything." The music cut. The celebration froze in place. The Henderson family looked at each other. Steve walked to the edge of the stage and spoke to his production crew in a low voice for approximately 40 seconds. The studio held its breath. A producer checked the console. Then, another. A headset conversation happened that the floor microphones caught fragments of, but couldn't fully reconstruct. And then, Steve Harvey turned back to face the room. He said, "We made a mistake." He said it clearly, into the microphone, to the full audience. The correct winner of tonight's Fast Money round is the Torres family from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He said it as a fact, not as a performance of contrition, not as a hedge. He said it. The Torres family stood completely still for a moment. Maria Torres put her hand on her husband's arm. Rosa, who was 12, made a sound. Then the whole family came undone together, in the best way, the way you come undone when something you thought was gone comes back. But Steve Harvey was not done with the thing he needed to do. He walked to the Henderson family. He stood in front of their team captain, a man named Ronald Henderson, and he said, "You played an extraordinary game. What happened tonight was not your fault, and it was not your doing. I am looking you in the eye and telling you personally that I am sorry." He said it directly. Then he pulled out his phone during a live taping. He said to the room, "I'm calling someone right now. This is not protocol. I don't care." He called his business manager. He said on camera, "I need to authorize a matching prize payment to the Henderson family from Nashville, the same amount the Torres family is receiving tonight. Tonight, not next week." He said the Henderson family name and city. He hung up. He turned to Ronald Henderson and said, "You came here, and you played, and you won everything you were supposed to win today. What happened with the announcement was my error and my show's error, not yours." Ronald Henderson nodded. He said, "I appreciate that." He said it with a dignity that made the audience quiet in a different way. Then, Steve Harvey did something that shocked even his own producers. He asked the cameras to stop rolling. He said it out loud, on stage, in front of the audience. He said, "I need a moment with the Torres family." Off camera. The production team looked at each other. A camera operator looked at the floor manager. Steve said, "Off camera." The floor director made a hand signal. The rolling cameras stopped. What happened in the next 4 minutes was not broadcast that night. It was described by 3 audience members who were present and by Maria Torres herself in an interview 1 year later. Steve Harvey sat down on the edge of the stage with the Torres family gathered around him. He said to Maria Torres, "You stood in that booth, and you answered 5 questions in 41 seconds, and 3 of them were number 1. I have been hosting this show for years, and I have never seen someone do what you just did." He paused, and I let the wrong announcement happen. "That is on me. I need you to know that I know that." He looked at Rosa, who was 12 years old. He said, "This was your idea, wasn't it?" Rosa said, "Yes, sir," he said. "You were right. You were completely right." Then he said, to the whole family, "Let me tell you something. 40 years ago I was showering in gas station bathrooms. I had nothing, no job, no home, no future I could see. And the one thing that kept me going was the idea that one day I would be somewhere, that I could make something right for someone who deserved it. I'm sitting here right now, with your family, and that is exactly where I am." He stopped, because 40 years ago, I was your Rosa. I was the kid with the idea nobody thought was going to work. Rosa Torres, who was 12 years old, said, "Did it work?" Steve Harvey laughed. He said, "You're looking at it, baby. When the episode aired 11 weeks later, with a title card at the opening explaining that the show's producers had discovered an error and chose to broadcast the full corrected footage as a lesson in accountability, it was seen 270 million times in the first 5 days. It trended under a hashtag that came from what Carlos Torres had said when he raised his hand: "I believe her total was higher." People shared the clip not for the mistake, but for the correction. Television ethicists wrote about it. Journalism professors assigned it. Customer service trainers used it in workshops. The phrase, "I believe her total was higher," became, briefly, a cultural shorthand for speaking up quietly and correctly when something is wrong. 3 months after the taping, the Torres family had used their prize to pay down a significant portion of their car loan and to begin a savings account designated for Rosa's college. 6 months after the taping, Maria Torres had been invited to speak at a New Mexico educators' conference about resilience and grace under pressure. A year after the taping, Rosa Torres won her school's regional science fair with a project on probability and error in competitive game theory, inspired, she told the judges, by an incident she had witnessed on a game show. Today, the Steve Harvey Foundation has an annual accountability award given to organizations that demonstrate public correction of institutional error. The award is named the Torres Standard. It comes with a $25,000 grant to the receiving organization's community program. The first plaque given out had a single line engraved on it, pulled from what Carlos Torres said when he raised his hand that Thursday night: "I believe her total was higher." Steve Harvey has spoken about the error many times. He says, "The worst thing I could have done that night was defend the mistake. The best thing I could do was own it, fix it, and sit with the people I owed an apology. That's it. It's not complicated. It just requires you to care more about being right than about looking right." He has never called the episode a failure. He calls it, consistently, the best lesson the show ever taught him. Some mistakes are just mistakes. And some mistakes, met with the right response, become the most important thing a person ever does on a stage. Steve Harvey got something wrong that Thursday night. And the way he got it right became the thing millions of people remembered, shared, and taught their children, long after the confetti on the floor had been swept away. If this story reminded you that accountability is not weakness, that the most powerful thing a person can do is look someone in the eye and say, "I was wrong, and here is what I'm going to do about it," subscribe to this channel and hit the thumbs up. Share this with someone who needs to see what real leadership looks like when it makes a mistake. Have you ever seen someone own an error so completely it changed how you thought about them? Tell us in the comments. Ring that notification bell for more moments that prove that integrity is not just what you do when everyone is watching. It is what you do when you could have gotten away with not doing it.